Well, welcome back. I'm Sheldon McLeod. This is Thinking Out Loud, presented to you by SaltWire. And Auditors General of years past, just to set the table here a bit, Auditors General are looking at finances and spending in the way that the government, deals with the money that they collect from all of us. And it's an important task, and it's a legislative task. In fact, the municipality of Halifax has an auditor department, and the province of Nova Scotia has one as well. And as you may or may not be aware, this week a report was released from Auditor General Kim Adair, and it was to look at, how government has been following up with some of the previous recommendations from previous audits. And by all accounts, as the quote said in the video statement that was released, for audits done in 2020, the implementation rate has plummeted. And I want to talk a little bit about this. Mike McPhee is a Deputy Auditor General here for the province of Nova Scotia. And welcome to you, Mike McPhee. It's nice to meet you, sir.
Good morning. Likewise.
And tell me your role as deputy. What is your task within the department, or tasks?
So as Deputy Auditor General, I report into the Auditor General. I guess, if you will, I'm second in command and step in when the Auditor General is unable to fulfill her duties for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. I oversee the quality control of the office, as well as the operational day-to-day of the office, and certainly weigh in on audits as required.
Now, you're working within a political environment, but you're a non-political entity. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you perceive the role, what you see as the role of the Auditor General's office?
Sure. We are certainly a key accountability component to government. As you mentioned, Sheldon, we are independent. We don't go political. We're the auditors of government, both in the financial statement auditing realm as well as at the program level. We do two types of audits. We do financial statement audits of both government organizations, for example, Nova Scotia Health, and then we also do a very large financial statement on the province's financial statements as well. And as you know, we also do what we call performance audits on government programs and on potentially funded entities of government, where we develop audit objectives and which a fancy term for audit questions, and we go to task to answer those. As a result, we need to be very independent. We need to have the buy-in of Nova Scotians as well as legislators, and we take our job really seriously in that way.
And how do you decide what area to focus on at any given point for a report?
Sure. What we do is we engage in I would say continual reassessment of our workload allocations and our audit plans, both in the financial statement realm as well as in these performance audits that we do. So it's a very comprehensive process, which requires us to engage at many levels to determine how we want to have positive impact for Nova Scotians and taxpayers. So we take feedback from the public. We have very in-depth full office-wide discussions regularly to ensure that we're allocating our finite audit resources in the most effective way that we see to have the impact we need to have.
And following up on previous reports, that's the focus in many ways of what happened this week. And your thoughts that on previous auditors have come forward with investigations or reports, looks back, looking back at some of the financial spending, and the new Auditor General, the fairly recently appointed Auditor General Adair, following up on some of those reports. And we've also gone through a provincial election. Is there an expectation that government, regardless of the party or election, follows up on the recommendations? I know it sounds like a pretty simple question, but that continuum, what can you say to that?
I think you nailed it right there, Sheldon. There's no expectation as a result of a government change that the recommendations would slide away and not be implemented. We we are very thoughtful when we're crafting our recommendations, when we're prior to tabling our reports, to really get at the nuts and bolts of the issue, look at root cause, and with that, they certainly stay very much in play and are relevant, independent of a change in government.
When we have follow-up rates of 30%, 40% of the recommendations, I'm wondering how that lands publicly, what it is that you're hoping that resonates with, or what that says to people about the progress of the work that you laid out or the recommendations you made for the benefit of the entire province and its finances.
Sure. I guess maybe a little bit of context here. The government has their own policy on implementation of Auditor General recommendations. And essentially the criteria is they should be fully implemented within 2 years of us tabling a report. Right. So, that's very much, that empowers us how we do our work. And so we wait a couple of years before we look to see where a department or a government organization is in terms of implementing recommendations. Mm-hmm. If you apply the policy, one might be able to arrive at the conclusion that you should be pretty much fully implemented after 2 years, and that's essentially a criteria that we apply when we seek the implementation status every year on our recommendations. So just important to note that in the recently tabled report yesterday, we have a 35% implementation rate for 2020 recommendations. So for audits that were tabled in 2020, 35% of recommendations were implemented. And just a little bit of inside baseball on this, so listeners may have some additional context here. We pick a point in time. So at October 2022, we go, what's the status then? And we cut it off. So that was our assessment period. So we take it back 2 years. And that's why we're looking at 2020 recommendations in this recent report.
And where are the biggest shortcomings from your perspective from this report that was just released this week?
All recommendations that we make are important. So, if there's one recommendation that's not implemented from an audit and 7 at another, we take that, we apply the same level of concern. I would say of note that from the 2020 audits, there are certain organizations that are contributing to the rate. For example, Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation have not completed 7 of 11 recommendations from an audit that we did in 2020. QE2 New Generation Project, Halifax Infirmary Expansion, of the 4 recommendations that we made then, 4 are not completed. And contaminated sites, we took a deep dive into contaminated sites in the province, and 2 recommendations of 5 are not completed for 2020. So that makes up the 35% that are. So of the 20 recommendations rendered in 2020, 13 are not completed.
As you say, the department is independent of government, and obviously government has departments, civil servants, people who are not elected. And I'm wondering what the legislation says. What power or authority do you have other than releasing a report, making it public, and saying, here are the deficiencies, here are the shortcomings?
We have very broad, powerful access provisions within our legislation to effectively meet the mandate of being the auditor of government, and with that, it enables us to do the work that we need to do to confidently conclude on the questions that we ask within our audits. We then table our reports, and it's at that point where we essentially let the accountability continue. We have no authority to demand implementation of recommendations. It essentially ends at the point of us tabling a report. However, this follow-up report and exercise that we do every year is a key accountability of to close the loop, if you will, after an audit has been tabled. So this is why we continue to assess implementation for 3 years after the clock starts ticking after 2 years, if that makes sense. So.
And someone asked, well, you can't level fines. Ultimately, it's the taxpayer who would be responsible anyway because of how government gets its revenue. So it's just about trying to find the tone here of effectiveness and accountability. And again, it would, even though you're apolitical, it does then become political whether or not a government or departments choose to enact regulation or the recommendations of this audit committee.
Yeah, we stay above that. That's not for us to wade into. However, I would say that the accountability continues from the point that we table. We come before the Public Accounts Committee, and they do deep dives into our reports. We do in-camera briefings with them, and then followed by public sessions with the auditees, with the departments that have been audited, and that way there's additional accountability that's rendered.
So we have some more time, or government and departments have more time to implement or act on some of those previous recommendations. What's in the pipeline? What's the next report to focus on?
Well, we have lots on the go at our in the office. We're a small but mighty crew, I would say. And our website, we have our website which details all the work that we are confident in and able to publicly convey to everyone. Our next audit will be tabled in early May. It'll be an audit of the Office of the Fire Marshal. As well, we are doing some work relating to ambulances. These are performance audits, in addition to the large amount of financial statement audit work that we do as well, which is a reoccurring annual thing.
What do you tell your friends and family that you do?
Wow, it's you say you're an auditor. People go, oh, I didn't file my tax returns, but that's not our business. So people kind of get a little bit hot under the collar and want to talk about their personal income taxes, but that's not our bag here.
And as far as how long have you been in this role?
I've been in this role for 2 years now. I've been essentially everywhere, if you will, from the perspective of legislated audit offices. I started here over 20 years ago, went overseas, did a little bit of work in other offices in the country, and came back here 5 years ago.
And given all of what we've just discussed, how do you feel about accountability in the work that you do, and not necessarily holding a government to account, but accounting for how well they're spending our dollars?
I personally take a lot of satisfaction out of it. If I'm going to audit, I want to audit for Nova Scotians. I want to audit for the ultimate stakeholders of a province or government. It's interesting work. It's extremely interesting work. You're auditing different programs. Every time you start another file, which is incredibly fascinating, challenging, can be scary at times, but extremely rewarding at the end of it.
And in a lot of ways, you're relying on the media. You're relying on sometimes other politicians to amplify the work that you're doing. Or is that an unfair assessment?
We don't report in a vacuum. We know that our work obviously is used by many legislators, the Sheldon McLeods of the world. And with that, we take we take what we report very seriously. We want it to be effectively communicated and digested in multiple ways. So you'll undoubtedly see that we've made a lot of inroads in the communication realm over the past couple of years. We've really freshened up our website. We've made our reports, I would say, I don't know what the term, slicker, more digestible, more infographics. Just at the end of the day, to ensure that we have the impact that we are that we want to have, and to ensure that we're meeting the mandate in a really effective way that's been entrusted to us through legislation.
And to agree to a sit down or a discussion like this with me. I really appreciate that. Mike, anything else that you feel is relevant to the conversation that I didn't touch on?
I don't think so. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you, by the way. And just maybe as it relates to the product that we tabled yesterday, that being specifically the follow-up on recommendations from 2018, 2019, and 2020. It's a really key component of the accountability loop. Recommendations need to be completed. They are agreed by management to be completed. We really work with them to ensure that we get it right. And so with that, we take it really seriously, and we do want to see recommendations being implemented. If not, the same issues that we identify in those audits will persist in the future. So.
Deputy Auditor General for Nova Scotia, Mike McPhee. It's, again, a pleasure to meet you this way. Thank you.
Thank you very much.